I'm Bill Wilson, and along with my friend Jim Gibson, I started a little punk label called Blackout Records in 1989. Over the years, we've released records from H2O, Killing Time, Sheer Terror, Killer Idols, Dead Guy, The New Bomb Turks, and many more. The Mad at the World podcast is a collection of conversations with our bands and extended family who have great stories to tell about their records, their art, the road, and growing up against the grain. Before we get started with this first episode, I wanted to point out that this was recorded in late 2020, just after the passing of Blackout co-founder Jim Gibson, and just prior to the unexpected loss of Breakdown and Killing Time's Rich McLaughlin. This episode, and really all of them, are dedicated to their memory. It's only fitting that we're kicking off this first episode of Mad at the World with Carl and Drago from Breakdown and Killing Time, because without them, the label probably would never have existed. On top of that, Carl and I have been friends ever since we were toddlers, so we've been part of the good, the bad, and the fugly in each other's lives for, 4 decades plus. So let's get to it. Carl, you come from a musical family. How did that wind up with you discovering music, playing guitar in a hardcore band?
Well, yeah, my family had a history of being in sort of Italian string bands, bands that would play at the feasts and so on and so forth. Mandolin, guitar. They would have that sort of big bass guitar that looks like a large acoustic guitar that you kind of sometimes see mariachi bands play. They had an Italian version of that. So that's my grandfather and my uncle brought all that to me and educated me about that. I still have my grandfather's mandolin, which is a prized possession of mine, which I'll learn to play at some point. But yeah, I mean that's the musical history, and having my uncle there as a guy who was really excited about the guitar, even though the music that he played just seemed so foreign to me. Just having someone there kind of egging me on was pretty cool in the beginning, and just in terms of other musical interest influences. I was exposed to a lot of country music from my parents. My dad was a huge Dixieland jazz guy, but I guess like in the war and in the 50s and 60s, he became sort of a big Johnny Cash and George Jones guy. So that's something I started with young, and that's something that kind of sticks with me. But for the music that got me, close to rock and roll, metal, and ultimately hardcore, the first shot across the bow that made my ears perk up, and had to be Kiss, and that was like the first revolution of influences.
Yeah, I remember when we were in 7th grade, your mom rolling up in her bright yellow Dodge Charger with
amazing car.
I forgot, what was the radio station? It was like it wasn't even WKHK. It was like
the country station.
Yeah,
WHN.
Oh yeah, it was. I think it was.
I think that's what it was. It's probably an AM station.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like all of a sudden like getting in the car with those like plush white vinyl seats and like going off to like 7th grade in this Charger, like cranking like the Kenny Rogers or the
the late 70s like pop country stuff. Kenny Rogers, the Olivia Newton-John, and
John Denver.
Yeah, Charlie Pride. He died this week. Rest in peace.
So Drago,
how
did you get started in this whole in music and playing the drums?
It's funny that you guys are talking about the country music thing, because that's all we grew up with early. Like that's all my mom would listen to, and like the 70s variety shows and stuff like that was like full of country music. I remember like in when I was like a kindergarten or whatever, I was playing some ball down at a playground. Some kid asked me, like an older kid asked me if I like rock or disco. And I was like, nah, I like country. Get the hell out of here. You know, it's like the same thing. It's funny. My mom used to go to garage sales and like just get records, you know, that people had in bins. So we had like older stuff, you know, I don't mean older stuff, but, you know, like 60s stuff like Herman's Hermits. And there was like Johnny Cash live at Folsom Prison and a lot of Bob Dylan records I grew up with listening to and that and country radio and stuff. It wasn't until like maybe I was around maybe 11 years old. My brother started listening to like Van Halen and AC/DC, and AC/DC just clicked with me. I thought that was the greatest band in the world. And that's pretty much the band that I like, you know, started learning how to play drums to. You know, I would just listen to a lot of Phil Rudd. I had my first little kit that I conned my dad into buying for me. I told him I knew how to play already. And then we went to some strange guy's house and bought a 4-piece kit for like, I don't know how much it was at the time, but it was like, you know, too much for my dad to afford. And we set it up in my basement and I couldn't play shit. And he was just like, I guess you're going to work on that. So.
Did, you know, I just remember like there was a very clear dividing line between me as like a non-music person and me being like, holy shit, what is this? And it was seeing Kiss on the Paul Lynde Halloween special.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
I was like, holy fuck, what is this? Because like it had all the aspects of like what a like 8-year-old boy in the 70s would want. It's like fire, explosions,
blood,
some demon dude, fucking loud stuff going on. It was great. You guys have any like of those like TV moments, like the Don Kirshner rock concert kind of shit that you would like find out that kind of blew your mind, like when you were a kid? Or was it like Drago? You said your brother turned you basically onto the music.
Yeah.
Was there any like seminal moment for you?
Well, I actually related this in the past, but it was like really the punk turn on was like a Rock Palace show that I saw with the Circle Jerks playing, and you know, Chuck Biscuits was playing with them at the time. And I was just like, you know, I watched drummers play before, but when I saw him come out and he was all over that kit and the music was just blaring and like right at like primetime TV hour, I was like, this is crazy. I think me and my friend Dave went to Mad Platters the next day. I picked up Golden Shower Hits. He picked up Angry Samoans, you know, Back from Samoa. And that's what got me off the metal tip right into punk and hardcore. And that was a TV show.
Yeah, that's really interesting how, especially where we grew up, right? And for social context, it's kind of weird because there must be something in the water in Westchester because like culturally, even in the 80s, it was still like desperately fucking hanging on to the 70s in a lot of ways. Like a lot of the habits were like, you know, drinking beers in the parking lot, listening to rock, like was like a very that 70s show kind of hang. It wasn't necessarily like, you know, what you would picture in a John Cusack movie.
I mean, yeah, you were only gonna kind of experience so much, hear so many new things. If you were in the schoolyard, you know, drinking beers with like Led Zeppelin playing, you really weren't gonna get much more than Groundhog Day. And then you kind of walk into the local record store, and it does open kind of vistas for you, you know, when you just see, you know, because music is so central to everything as a teenager, that when you just get exposed to suddenly all these different styles of music, and it opens up your eyes and makes you want to, you know, I mean, in the case of like what you say about Westchester, I think the fact that you could hop on a bus or a subway or a commuter train and end up being in the city where all kinds of stuff was happening. That's really, I think that's probably what kind of fed that little small vein of punk rock rebellion that you would, that, you know, where we all found each other in Westchester and Yonkers and Plains.
Yeah, and the record stores were just like, I mean, I think between, you know, Gibson, Joey I, Tony, Sue, you know, even Joel even though he was kind of like not, he was an adult when we were buying records at his store.
But he provided the space for all that stuff to happen,
Yeah.
And he was a big music fan, and it's like even the younger people, the record store people, who would be hipping you to stuff that they thought you didn't always have the same taste as you. So it was like, it was just that was the job, this.
Yeah. I remember Jim Gibson being the Motorhead guy, I remember, Tony, always pushing the Sisters of Mercy and the Misfits, and kind of like, I would never have heard those bands, He's, I credit Tony, and I do it all the time with, Tony and the people in the stores, but especially Tony, being kind of the Pied Piper of fucking weirdness.
Well, Tony gave me my first, mixtape. One of the first times I was in here, he was like, if you want to check out like all these bands in one in one tape, here you go. And it was like a crazy list of Bad Brains was on it. Misfits, Black Flag, White Flag, like a bunch of stuff that I never heard of, and it was kind of just compiled for me as like a little tutorial here to get me into stuff. And that was one of the first things I picked up at the record stop. I was like, my friends were getting more and more, out of the mainstream metal stuff, and we started listening to Metallica, and things were getting a little bit more like hectic and a little bit more crazy, and it was harder to find that type of music. And that's why it led us to these different stores and stuff. I had to take the 20 bus to Yonkers to go to Mad Platters for the first time. I had to get on a bus and drive for miles out of White Plains. Guys, I didn't grow up in Yonkers, and we took it all the way up there. I was like, how the hell, what if I can't get back? What if something happens to me out here? But I didn't care, it was cool.
You were also younger too. Like, what were you, like 13 or 12 when you were doing that?
Yeah, well, I was, probably around, but I had to be like 15 maybe. I could I got a 15-year-old now. I don't let him leave the house, and I'm traipsing around, going everywhere, taking transfers on buses, go here and go there.
Something about record stores and Mad Platters too. There's like, I mentioned before how being exposed to Kiss at a young age was like a revolution moment in terms of sound and energy and style. And a similar moment happened in Mad Platters when I heard Victim from AF, like that record Victim in Pain was on the wall, and I don't know if one of us bought it or we asked to hear it, but that shit fucking blew up my head and blew up so many ideas of what I thought music and was supposed to be. And I wouldn't have heard that. I wouldn't have heard that if I wasn't hanging around a place like Mad Platters. I never would have been exposed to it. And we wouldn't have a band, maybe. How would I know Drago? I mean, he was, a couple of grades younger than me, and he lived in White Plains, which was half an hour away. If it wasn't like the people. Those record store people that we talk about weren't only connecting you with music that you might like, but they were connecting you with people. And we met Drago because he was. I think it was maybe Tony or maybe Sue, one of those two that connected us.
It was Tony. I used to hang out. You remember they used to have they had like a little bulletin board in the front of the shop at the record stop. Like bassist wanted, drummer wanted, that, whatever. And he used to always catch me look at it. And he said, Tony says to me, he goes, what do you play? And I said, I play drums. And he goes, well, how are you, how long you been playing? I said, a few years. I play, some stuff with some guys in high school. And he was like, well, I know these guys that starting a hardcore band in Yonkers, and they're really good. And they're looking for a drummer. And I was just like, at that point, I was just like, not enough confidence to be like, well, yeah, I'll reach out to them. But he caught me looking at the bulletin board. And I never did it. And he pushed it even further. And he went, to, I think he went to Don or Carl or something and said, there's a kid that comes in here like once a week. And he always seems to be, he's interested in this. He listens to this, and, maybe he might work out. So that was a total Tony hookup.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff.
Right, so Don was one of the ne'er-do-well metal kids that we hung out with, all through high school. And then, as we all got into like heavier, crazier forms of music, and then, started going to matinees, over the summer, Don and I met Rich at the public pool that we worked at.
And how would you not meet Rich? I mean, he was the only kid. He was the only kid at Sprain Ridge Public Pool in Yonkers with a giant mohawk. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and Don is not shy, so he's like, "Oh, who are you?" And like he was probably wearing the the bleached jeans thing.
Yeah.
And they probably bonded over that. I think Rich was wearing probably doinks and combat boots while he was on the pool deck. But, that started. And then, I personally remember kind of like, that first breakdown practice, even before Jeff, with that original lineup with no vocalist, right? It was in Rich's garage. The first breakdown practice was in Rich's garage.
I think we met Jeff through either Tony or Sue as well, probably.
Oh yeah, without question. Jeff was another record, Rock and Rex record stop.
The Yonkers crew met the New Rochelle singer, and then we added the White Plains drummer all through the magic of the independent punk rock record store.
And do you remember the first breakdown song that you actually wrote?
Oh.
Well, you and Don, I guess, right? Because
maybe I don't know what that was. Be honest with you, I don't remember what song it was. Maybe "Life of Bullshit." I'm not sure.
Yeah, because you wrote the lyrics to that, right?
I think so. Yeah. Because there was no one else in the band to do it. We had no singer. Maybe Rich might have tried to sing a little bit or something. I don't remember exactly what we did before Jeff came along, but it wasn't that. It was a very short period of time.
So you found Jeff. You found, so it was like you and Don. You found Rich. You found Jeff. The first drummer was not working out, so you found Drago. And then, after writing that, basically the demo, you guys found your ways to playing that first show in the rough, seedy borough of Mamaroneck, New York, at the church. Yeah,
we managed to shut the show down within probably 120 seconds. just end. We just started playing, and then the whole gig was over. All the chaperones ran out, grabbed all the kids who were moshing in the church hall in Larchmont. And it was over. It felt like a triumph, to be honest with you.
I mean, if you're gonna have one show, if you're gonna have the first show, it might as well be that. It was you guys in the Zombie Squad, right?
Yeah. They got to play. They got to play their whole set, and everyone enjoyed it. And then we went up there, and game over. Instantly game over. There are a couple pictures though.
People went a little. I guess they went a little sick. That's when I had I brought two bass drums to that show. I remember jamming them in Chris Cotter's station wagon. Oh man. Yeah, that didn't last long.
And then it was kind of like you guys played that show, and it seemed, I mean, in my head, it could have been years, but it was really like the span of a year that you guys recorded the demo, played a bunch of shows. I don't even remember if you played Seabees or the Anthrax first. I don't even remember what the order of shows was, but it just seemed like over the course
Seabees was very much our last show together as that unit of five. We couldn't get a show in New York, which was we could play in Albany, we could play in Connecticut, we could play in Long Island, but Yeah, I think we played 10 or 11 shows out of town, so to speak. I mean, before Ray Bees and Ray Capo called us and offered us a show at the Pyramid. We were so like just, not like, we weren't getting booked in the scene. The scene was not booking any shows for us. So when Ray Bees actually called Don's house, Don thought it was a prank phone call and hung up on him.
Yeah. And then he called back.
That's great. You almost don't believe it. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, nice try. You're very funny.
and that show, and Drago's going to help me here, but that show is, I think, Altercation, Side by Side, and maybe that was it. Maybe it's just those three bands.
I think that's
YDL. Maybe was it YDL? No, maybe not.
I don't know. Somebody recently posted that.
But like, it was weird because like you guys, recorded the demo again in Westchester, right? You guys, it's interesting that, really there was nobody who was part of like, you guys would go to CB shows, and you'd be around, and you knew a lot of people going to matinee shows, and you're always at shows, but like you guys weren't part of the fabric of like the LES culture, right?
Yeah. We were fucking Westchester kids.
Yeah.
The first time we played Seabees was the first time that I stepped inside that club. It was the first time I stepped inside that club. I had a fake ID made up. I was 16 at the time, and I didn't know what the rules were. I had like a school ID that I altered to say I was 17 or 8. I don't know what the hell I put on it, but it was like nobody gave a fuck. I walked in with the bass drum on my head, and there was just like, here, there you go set up. I was like, all right, that's cool. That was the first time I stepped in there.
Did you drink a beer at the show?
Oh yeah, definitely.
A beer? I'd say that. No, I'd say that didn't happen. Many was.
So Anthony, meeting the guys meeting Mike Stankiewicz and Anthony, the story's been told before, but for those who are uninitiated, how did you meet Token, Anthony, either during Token entry or after, and then, talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think Carl did the introduction to Anthony. And the first time he walked into my dad's garage was the first time I think, I've seen him, I guess, at shows before, but it was the first time that we actually met. But we had never stopped. Like, as soon as Breakdown broke up, I had one phone call from Don saying that the band was over in its current lineup, and me and Jeff want you to stay with us because Rich and Carl are breaking off. And then I swear it was a half an hour later, Carl called me and said, the band's breaking up. Me and Rich are together.
This is great.
And we want you to play drums. And I was just like, all right. And I just said, I gave Carl a thumbs up, and I called Don back and said that it wasn't going to happen.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Carl was writing all the killer stuff, in my eyes, and we had a better rapport between the three of us. I thought, and I also had some little thing in the back of my head that maybe I could start writing some lyrics in this new band.
Shuttle Blast.
That one didn't go over too well, but it worked out, Like I got what I wanted, and but we started meeting the next week right after Breakdown broke up, and
we felt like we had so much momentum, and we're writing music and playing shows, and we played the best show of our lives at Seabees, and suddenly we're not a band anymore, and like, why are we a band anymore? Like it's still confusing to this day, and I don't want to get into it, but like it was just a personal conflict like that happened. And
you tell that story about like we had the music for Telltale as Breakdown.
Yeah,
right?
we did. We played it. We played it at Seabees.
Yeah, so if we played it at Seabees instrumentally, and I wrote the lyrics for Telltale, so that was within weeks of the breakup.
Anthony was sitting right there on the stage too when we played it instrumentally. It's kind of funny, So we played that one show, and calling Steve to fill in for us was fun, and he was a friend and everything. But I guess we all realized that that wasn't going to be the next thing. So then we stopped using the name, and shortly after we got Anthony, and we kind of bargained for Anthony. We knew him from seeing him at shows and hanging out at some records and all that, and
so we were like Breakdown DC for like one show.
but then we didn't even account for Mike. Anthony just showed up, and he brought Mike along with him. So then suddenly, okay, this guy can play.
I guess we're a 5-piece. Yeah,
I guess we're 5. That's pretty good. Yeah.
So then, you almost kind of followed the same plan, right? You wrote a demo.
That's what you did. I mean, don't give us too much credit for coming up with some kind of plan, but that's what every band did at that time, and to some degree, probably still does.
But you didn't play a lot of shows before the demo. Like, what was different is you kind of went in and did a recording almost like without playing a shitload of shows. Like, I think, and the difference is like it wasn't like Raw Deal's first show, either the Anthrax or Seabees.
I think it was Seabees, yeah. And I think it was like maybe with Absolution, and I feel like we played our first practice the day after Thanksgiving in 1987, and our first gig was probably at Seabees in January or February of '88. Yeah, I mean, we were just writing stuff, and and like Drago said, he was writing a lot of lyrics. I think Anthony had some lyrics left over from Token Entry, and so the songs came together quick. And Breakdown had paid their dues, like playing all over and not getting any shows in the city. And but by that point, we were playing Seabees, and Anthony was well known around the scene. So it was like the minute we were ready to play a gig, we had a gig.
And then those demos started sounding like hell out of some records.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's crazy. And that was obviously the Raw Deal demo. And then, that's kind of when, and I don't really, it's weird. I don't remember when Where the Wild Things Are came out, or kind of the impetus, the timeline between, when you recorded for Where the Wild Things Are, and between the demo and the order of the compilations that came out as well. Like, it's all kind of a blur because it all happened within the span of basically 2 years, if not less.
It is. I would try to pinpoint down this timeline from, the beginning of Breakdown to well-established Raw Deal. And it was seriously a year. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy to think about it, because back then it seemed like forever. We were doing this for a long time, and it was nothing.
It's like it seemed back then it seemed like it took forever. Like, I remember putting the masters together for Where the Wild Things Are and being like, oh, it's going to wait. And I thought it felt like 2 years to me to put all the records together, and get all the masters from people, but it took a few months. So, when Jim and I finally decided to do it, it was pretty quick. And, between, Breakdown Mark II, and you guys were like the anchor tenants for this compilation. And it was easy because I knew everybody in both the bands. So, let's talk a little bit about, how did you guys get signed to In Effect Records? How did that actually come about?
Well, that brings up a whole lot of stuff because strangely, the offer, the entree, the introduction to In Effect Records came into Mike Hellfire Senkwitz, as we like to call him, and at the time he was going through a little bit of a musical crisis, which is something that we all go through as creators of music and players. And so to tell you how they approached him or how that went down, I don't know. I just do know that he presented us he presented the idea to us as something horrible, because he just did not have any interest in committing himself to hardcore, because he had sort of other ideas of what he wanted to do in music. So
he was like the first guy to double down on Guns N' Roses, I think, right?
It's strange. Well, I mean, listen, when Guns N' Roses recorded that, was it Welcome to the Jungle or Sweet Child of Mine? I don't know. Whatever video they recorded at the Ritz, that was filled with New York hardcore kids. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that happened. I don't know if I got the memo. I don't think I did, but yeah, I mean, he was at that, and yeah, I mean, that sort of changed his trajectory. I mean, not to speak too much about Mike, but I mean, after that happened, the next band he ended up in was Nausea. So that might have been a temporary blip in his in his radar. But
yeah, he had already talked to us and said that he'd like to go in a different direction with the music, and we kind of were blindsided by that.
What? Yeah, it was very much like what kind of a conversation when he brought it up to us that we should be a little bit more like Guns N' Roses. It was really not what we were thinking at all. But at the time, that there was other labels that were talking to us about doing things, so it wasn't. It wasn't this shocking thing. It was just like a sort of another little thing that kind of came into our universe. I mean, we were already doing something. I believe we had already talked about recording the 2 tracks for you. There was talk from, I don't know, was it Giant Record? There was a lot. There was a lot of labels that suddenly were waking up to the idea that New York hardcore was somehow viable for their business interests. Maybe because so many people were coming to the shows, but yeah, people were talking to us.
We also went through the Chris Williamson.
Yes, I mean, that was part of it. Yeah, that was part of it. That was. I mean, he talked to us about going on Profile Records, and our meeting with him was nothing short of completely strange.
We performed for him. That was really weird.
Yeah, we went into one of these fancy, showcase rehearsrsal rooms with him, and he stood there and
he was reading the magazine the whole time,
critiqued us, or it was he was mostly quiet, which is weird. Yeah. Then at the end, he had some things to say, and it was. I don't think anyone felt good about that, especially Anthony. Being such a hardcore purist, I think the whole idea of having to audition for this guy was something that made him that filled him with unease and rage boiling underneath the surface.
What? So eventually, I guess it was the In Effect guys who kind of showed you. I guess you guys went out to the office and met them, and it seemed like a good fit because Sick of It All was also signing there, and
Prong was there. Of course, Tommy Victor was someone that had mixed us at Seabees a number of times. Yeah, it was there was a familiarity amongst the the people over there. Steve had played in AF for a minute. Howie was a generally all around kind of like nice, engaging guy. Brain, the art guy, hung out at Seabees with us. It was like it didn't feel like we were stepping into a corporate office for sure. Let's say that at least.
Like all this shit between the Raw Deal demo, Breakdown becoming successful, the Raw Deal demo just happening, and kind of the rapid success of the band to where the Wild Things Are coming out was this 2-year blur, really, for everybody. And then, it just kind of exploded, for you guys, where, you signed to, what was then like the major indie label, and there was a big hubbub. And I think that there was this whole vision that like the band consciously changed its sound, because you'll hear people even to this day talk about like, well, I liked them when they were Raw Deal, and to me, it's a continuum. There is no difference, but some people like figure out it was like a grand strategic maneuver. It wasn't a grand strategic maneuver.
No, we just kind of, we were kids learning how to play our instruments, learning how to fuck around with sound and gear and stuff. And like, that was just the progression of just another year of being someone who's in a band playing gigs. I mean, there was no calculation. That's for sure. I mean, even like we barely knew what the fuck we were doing when we made the demos. And when we went instantly from a 2-track live 2-hour demo session to recording an album in a 24-track professional studio, like we were so far out of our depth, we had no clue what we were doing. So any idea that we were calculating and purposely trying to change our sound is absurd, because all we were trying to do is just play our songs.
The whole thing, like going from you talk about like a 2-track live, and then going into like a pro recording studio, like that was it was a learning experience. There was we had to kind of
was it ever
be led around. Like I showed up with my my Blue Monster Yamaha touring kit, and within it took us about 2 hours before I was told, just put those drums aside and you're going to use the studio kit, and you're going to stop drinking, and you're
stop drinking, stop hitting somebody's cymbals.
Stop hitting the cymbals so much. I mean, I don't know. That first night when we went to Normandy, when we pulled in there, and what's his name from Aerosmith is there, and I don't know.
Brad Whitford was sitting behind the board.
Yeah, so
our previous recording session was live. With 7 songs recorded live and mixed in the course of 2 hours, and then we show up at the studio and Brad Whitford from Aerosmith is sitting behind the desk.
Yeah, and he's in the back room, and I'm like floating in my shit, and I'm like, I thought he was like one of the techs and stuff, or the intern or something. And I'm like, where do I put my shit, man? And he's like, I don't know, I don't work here. So I was like, oh fuck. But I found out later that night. I mean, Tom Soares came up to us. I guess to meet us. It was like me. I think it was me and Carl got there first, or whatever. That we were just kind of sitting down, and Tom Soares sat down with us just to kind of like meet and greet type stuff. And I was just like, yeah, I can't wait to get down there, and I want to lay down the stuff, and then I just want to kind of relax, and just kick back. And he's just like, you're not going to be relaxing here. And I was just like, what? And he goes, no, he goes, hopefully we'll get through the drum tracks in the next, whatever. But he goes, that's a real bad attitude to start off with. We're not here to relax. And I was like, oh shit, I thought this was supposed to be fun. Yeah.
He gets a lot of credit, that guy,
yeah,
for that record, because
he had to keep us all in line. The whole thing was like, yeah, we go from 2-track live, and then we're in a place where it's his realm, so we had to follow suit, with that. or else we would have been a total mess.
Yeah, I mean, we were green as a band, and you know, our label people were green as label executives, and you know, it's like, all right, we'll just send these kids up. We'll send these kids up to the studio with no producer, no pre-production, and they'll just make a record, you know. And you know, Tom Storrs was really just, you know, he was just the house engineer there, but he stepped into the role of being the producer on the record, and we worked together. And it was harder work than we thought it could possibly be or could imagine it would be. And yeah, he helped to shepherd us through it. It was good to have him up there. I mean, you know, there was a residence above the studio. You know, it was just a lot of like, you know, kind of mattresses, bunk beds. Hold on. And stuff.
I got to interrupt you though, because a residence. It was like
it was garbage. Yeah.
It was like people are probably envisioning listening to this. It was like I mean
anyone who's played in a band and has stayed in like a band room above a club knows the utter like disgustingness of it. And like, but this was a step up from that, like just one, maybe a half step up from that. But I'm sure the Backstreet Boys had it filled with all sorts of attractive young ladies. A Killing Time, as Killing Time did wherever we went, it was filled with our boys. Our boys were there wherever we went. And you know, even though we were supposed to be working at the studio, our crew was there. And Bill, you were part of it.
Yeah. It was like a bunch of like fat dudes from Yonkers on Long Island. Instead of like that's what hardcore. That's basically the gift that hardcore gives perpetually. Is like, oh, look at this portly one, and you know, and it's like 4 dudes for every dude. It's like, oh, this is really great. But yeah, you know, I mean, it was fun because everybody was just, you know, breaking each other's balls and whatever it is. And obviously, you know, participating in the background vocals is always fun, you know, to get to scream into the mic and see who can be loudest and more stupid in the gang vocals. But like, you know, with the recording session, how different was it to go from 2-track live to the full spectrum of overdubs and, you know, having Tom really ride the shit out of you guys in the studio?
Well, we had no clue. I mean, we went in to record the Breakdown demo, 2 hours total, whole band recording at once, you know, mixing, then mixing it for like 15 minutes or half an hour, then leaving all psyched with your cassette tape. Same thing with the real Raw Deal demo. Same thing with the second Raw Deal demo. Then all of a sudden we're in the studio, you know, where the guy from Aerosmith is hanging around. You know, the Backstreet Boys had recorded there. The illustrious John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band had recorded there. And, no, we were well out of our depth, and you know, the people that were there were shocked that a bunch of I mean, we could play our songs. You know, we had the energy. We knew what we meant. We knew like what the songs were about, and we were all about playing them. And there wasn't any problem there. But like in terms of just playing them at that level at a professional, you know, 24-track studio was not, you know, anything we were used to. And the people at the studio were shocked that we didn't have a producer, and because we hadn't done any pre-production, we just were a bunch of green dudes there ready to play some hardcore. And that was a little bit of a, you know, that caused a little bit of edginess between us and the label. I remember Anthony calling up the record label and just screaming at them about why we were up there and we didn't have a producer and we don't know what we're doing. Like it was, but you know what? At the end of the day, once we got past all that kind of crap and we realized we weren't going to be in there for 3 hours and record and come out with a record, we learned a shit ton. We learned a shit ton. We all learned a shit ton. And we made something that we're kind of still proud of like 30 years later. So fuck all the bullshit. I mean, Drago got his ass fucking busted to shit. You know, I had this, you know, like to this day, like, you know, like when you're recording guitar overdubs or when you're like doubling a rhythm track, and I don't want to go into, you know, too deep in the weeds here, but when you're doing that kind of stuff, you typically you find a place for that's comfortable for you, and that's part of what a producer or an engineer does, you know. And like, but in this session, they had me in a fucking glass box with 4 Marshall cabinets, 2 Marshall heads, doubling my rhythm tracks. And I was in there like everyone else in the band was out like at the beach or whatever the fuck they were doing. And I was just sitting in there. I was sitting in there for like 8 hours, like it was endlessly. And the guy, you know, the guys were like, oh, you know, AJ from Leeway got this done a lot quicker than you did. It was like, so I mean, you know, it's like it was trial by fire, and it was a learning experience, but it was a shit ton of fun, and it was like it created the document that our band is known for, you know, and that we still that still is the reason we're still talking to each other right now about it and playing shows and festivals and all that kind of stuff.
When you were in the booth where everybody was feeling for you because Soares sent us out, he said, you guys got to disappear for like a couple hours until he's done with this because he's having a rough time. And we're like, all right, so where are we going to go? Like we're in like Warren, Rhode Island. There's nothing to do. So I don't know what we kicked around doing, but we made sure we didn't step back inside the studio for like a few hours. When we got back, Carl was still sitting in the same fucking spot.
It was so loud in there too. And I had never even tried to double a guitar before. I didn't even know what the concept of what doubling the shit that I already played was. I never thought that was even a thing, but I found out.
So Drago, and it's also like, you know, with Breakdown, you said that you never got a chance to write lyrics, but on Brightside, you had an opportunity to write pretty much the majority of the lyrics. So where did that come from? And, you know, what's some of the backstory behind some of like the anthems? Because I think that there are probably a lot of tracks that people probably misunderstand. So what do you think like your most misunderstood lyric might be?
The most misunderstood one, I'm not. Oh man. What always gets me is like we've played everywhere. And these are lyrics that I wrote when I was 17 years old, you know, and to hear them, you know, scream back with like such fury, you know, anywhere that we went, you know, Japan too, you know, people are screaming, you know, lyrics to Backtrack, Brightside. And this is all stuff that I wrote completely alone, you know, and I guess that's where most of the lyrics kind of came from. Just kind of tried to look on the bright side, found out there isn't one. That's not a suicidal song at all. That was pretty much me seeing no future in a relationship that I was in. So I guess nobody sees the love aspect of that song at all.
You guys had this record come out. You had all this enthusiasm about the record. You had, you know, a lot of great reviews that came out about the record, a lot of expectations that you guys had about what your trajectory was. And then, you know, when you were offered tours, you weren't able to do that. And, you know, reflect a little bit upon kind of like what happened to the band after Brightside and what you guys thought and what the reality was.
What I wanted out of the band, I mean, as soon as the record come out, I wanted to go support it. I wanted to play as many shows as humanly possible, but it wasn't in the game plan for Anthony, who had decided that he was going to stay in school and he couldn't afford leaving for long periods of time because of his education. But it was the only thing that was on my mind. It was the only thing that I was thinking about for, the years leading up to it, that, why wouldn't we do this? Why wouldn't we go all out, balls out on this and have as much fun as humanly possible? And Anthony was the reality that kind of just squashed it, and there was bitterness at the time about like, why did we go through this? Why are we doing this? And now that I look back on it, he held to his guns. He did what he wanted to do. He thought what was best for his life. But there wasn't a lot of fun after that point. When we were kicking around on the East Coast playing show here and show there was always the itching of why are we stuck in this one locale? Why can't we, just go out and shit never come back, is all I felt like at the time. I had absolutely nothing else going on in my life at that point. I didn't have any other plan except playing music for as long as somebody would let me play music for. It wasn't until, I started learning this stuff and this is way that this was going to go, that I had to, make alternate plans and figure out some other way I was going to get through this, because I wanted to, I wanted to do it with this band. It was something that's always, I was writing the lyrics, close friends, meeting every week or sometimes 2 times a week to practice this stuff. It was, pretty all encompassing my entire life at the time. So to kind of put it on hiatus was depressing.
A lot of bands did their demo and did their record, and they never did anything else again. I don't think we thought that's what we would do, but in some ways that's what we did. I mean, we didn't plan on no one ever. We didn't have a manager. We didn't have an agent. We didn't have any designs on going on tour. But then as soon as the record came out and we started to get some people writing about it, some people playing it on the radio, and people, spending their money and buying it, and people coming to shows and coming to see us play. Then suddenly the record label was like, hey, Overkill needs a support band, or like, there was others. I remember that one specifically. I don't know why, but at that point, I was like, oh, wow, that's it was shocking, but at the same time, it was instantly like, oh, well, yeah, well, what the fuck else am I doing? Anything else I'm doing, I could put on hold. It was the one thing that was clear to me was that, with Breakdown, we came out of nowhere and managed to kind of write a demo that caught a little bit of fire. And we went from playing a church social, so to speak, to showing up at Seabees, and suddenly everyone there knew our lyrics, and which was shocking. And then, months later, we're doing the same thing with Raw Deal, and it's getting even bigger. So yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, when we started offering those tours, I was all in, and I probably don't feel. I mean, you probably, when you're talking to Drago and I, you're probably talking to 2 guys who probably felt similar, but not everyone in the band felt that way, and it was a bummer, and it was depressing, and it was depressing not only for us, but it was depressing for the people at the record label. I mean, you know how it is. You're a record label guy your whole life. When you invest something in a band, and it doesn't just come out like a wet fart when the record comes out and people are actually stoked and buying it and eager to go see the band, and you're excited too. So the people at the label were when we were no, we're not going to go on this tour. No, we're not going to go on that tour. They were like, oh God, who are these fucking guys that we signed?
They're like, what are you going to do then? I mean, they spent all this money for us to record up there. We went overtime. We had to go back, right, Carl?
Yeah, and, we spent a lot of money recording that silly record. Yeah, I'm being the degenerate gear and guitar nut that I am. I probably spent a bunch of money on fucking amplifiers or something, which people ended up.
You did.
So like,
and then after this thing is all done, and they spent all this money and went over budget, we bring this fucking thing in at 27 minutes. Right, falling 3 minutes short of LP status, I guess is the way that they put it, and it had to be released as an extended EP or some shit. But they were pissed about that.
Yeah,
if we had known, we would have done 3 minutes of feedback at the end of the fucking last track.
So yeah, all that happens, and and then that's Drago said before, sometimes we love each other, sometimes we hated each other. When all that came to bear, when we had an album that people liked, and we had tours coming in that people wanted us to go do, and we weren't doing the tours, and we were pissed at each other, and the label was pissed at us. It didn't last. It didn't last much longer, and I don't think we made it. I don't think we made it into 1991. We probably broke up in 1990. Maybe I'm wrong. But we were writing new material at the time. We were we were still trying to do it, but just the cross purposes that we were at, and the different goals everyone had just were not tenable for us to continue playing together. So we I think I don't know. I feel like I remember playing at L'Amour's. I don't know who we were playing with. Maybe Drago knows, but I just remember being so fucking so completely fucking disgusted that I was like,
I remember that show. I don't remember who we were playing with, but yeah, I remember the show, and I remember we were all at the end at that point. Me and Anthony got into a big fight about something. I broke something on the drum kit. I fucked up one of the songs, and it turned into a big shit on stage. There was a lot of that.
So, yeah, so that's it. See ya. Nothing to do here. Nothing to do here. Done. Over. Fuck you. All right. Fuck you. But that's what happens with Killing Time. Then what? It's not even 2 years later, and we're like, oh, let's go to Europe. If they want us to go to Europe, let's go to Europe. Oh, let's record these songs.
All right, hold on. So let me get a little bit of so this is where I want to kind of flesh out the middle period. So you guys, have this, your relationships, start to degenerate within the band for various reasons, whether it be touring, whether it be personality based. Everybody just is getting sick of each other. And eventually you call it, call the gang. Luch, you move to the city, right? And you start playing in some other bands, and you got to go on tour, for a little bit. So talk about some of the other stuff you did in that, short hiatus between, Killing Time kind of the return and the first return of the band, the happy hour thing, and then in Europe. But what did you do in the middle?
I mean, I was working, but I've been playing in bands consistently, since Breakdown started. I mean, there were always some other bands. I mean, I had a band where I played with the guys from Killing Time. We also kept playing together without Anthony. I had a band called Mind's Eye. I played with the Canzaneri brothers and Electric Frankenstein, and we put a couple of records out, toured Europe a couple of times, toured the US, and so I mean, I continued to play and continue to play, to this day. I mean, but the pull of Kiling Time was strong. I mean, right now I play in a band called Kings Destroy. We have 4 records out. Recently Drago and I joined up with a friend named Derek that wrote some killer hardcore songs, and we did an EP called the name of the band's called Gordita Beach. I have another I have another hardcore band called Dread with Davin from Eaten Alive and Lars from Judge. That's kind of on hold because of COVID. So I mean, listen, I play guitar, I play in bands, I play music, I do it. I mean, that's kind of something that I always did and always will do as long as I'm able. But with the Kiling Time thing, it's like we talked about the L'Amour show and how shitty it was. I mean, the reason it was shitty is because we had opportunities. We had a trajectory. We had things that were being offered. We had a path laid out for us, and instead, we were trying to cling to the same things that we had been doing the 2 years prior. So it was just burning out and imploding on itself. We weren't looking ahead. We were just kind of trying hard to stay in the place that we were in because it suited different people's band's lifestyle. So, and the music scene in New York, like around that time was fucking killer, so, I mean, there was just so
right. Well, that's part of it. Like New York had changed, right? Like, so talk like that. That's the thing is like, I moved downtown. I was running Earache at the time. Nasty Little Man was in the office, literally in the same office as us. Like there were hot and cold running indie rock bands all over the place. Hardcore scene marginalized.
Having the benefit of hindsight, around the fucking country, man, hardcore was just like fucking kicking into fucking gear in 91, 92. Shit was fucking starting to really fucking happen. But because of that interruption, because of all the violence, hardcore got derailed in the early 90s in New York City. It got split into 2 scenes. So I think hardcore was pretty damn viable. It just happened just in New York. The scene just got so kind of fucked up with all the other forces that came in.
Yeah, I mean, scenes were springing up around the country. I mean, New Jersey kind of exploded. Cities in Pennsylvania or out in Long Island, where they were really just kind of, starting to grow like saplings in a forest from a bigger tree in New York. But like the original tree in New York was kind of, in decay, but all the satellites were growing around the country.
Yeah. And the scene in New York lost its clubhouse, I mean, if there was no CBGBs, where was the hardcore scene going to be the hardcore scene, what sidewalk were we all going to stand on Sunday,
Right. Yeah, where were we? What other club would just let us stand outside for an entire day and go see one band?
Yeah, I mean, and of course there was ABC No Rio, but those people didn't want any of the like New York hardcore Mark II bands. They wanted to have their own scene, So it's like that wasn't the hardcore scene of Sheer Terror and Kiling Time and Sick of It All and Gorilla Biscuits and Youth of Today, And what happened to a lot of these bands that I mentioned right there, they started touring. They were all over the world, so that became their life. They were New York hardcore bands, but they weren't looking to be at Seabees every Sunday. They were out doing their thing, but like Kiling Time was still stuck in New York, where Seabees had closed down and shit was all fucked up, and Yeah, it seemed like the hardcore scene was dying, but yet, New York was on fire with so much cool activity in music and all kinds of art that it was just, there were other things to direct your attention to.
So you guys were, we both had New York as our playground for like the city as a playground for like 2 years. And then I don't remember whether it was, everybody decided that, hey, we have this couple extra Killing Time songs, let's do it. And we did Happy Hour, which was a little bit of a musical departure from the original kind of Brightside sound, but still, nonetheless, I still feel it's Killing Time, even though, Anthony might have felt it was, not on Sunday. And you guys did that EP, and I think it was before you guys were offered Europe or simultaneously offered to go to Europe. I don't really remember the timeline again because it was such a short blip.
It was right around the same time because, as they like to do in Europe, you absolutely need to have, you can't just tour, you need to have a product to tour on. And so there was the extended version of Happy Hour, which included some of the stuff from the second Raw Deal demo. I don't know, maybe some other, I don't know whatever it was on it to flesh it out. So it was right around the same time. I think we might have started doing the Happy Hour before we heard about the Europe thing, which would have made sense.
I remember doing the layout for Happy Hour on the kitchen table in the house that you and Steve Murphy lived in the Bronx. Like I distinctly remember kind of doing that back cover, like the party's over kind of thing. You guys are on this hiatus. You record Happy Hour, which theoretically would have been your swan song, but then you get invited to Europe. And then kind of this, you had to do some hot swapping of different members. So talk about how the Europe tour came about and then kind of, your experience during that time. Because it was definitely different than the original kind of lineup of Killing Time.
Yeah, well, at this point, Rich had switched to guitar because there was we went through an original thing with Rich for a little bit that he wanted to get off bass. He wanted to be the second guitarist in the band. He wanted us to be a 5-piece. And the rest of us weren't having it for a while, which kind of led up to Rich leaving and then us getting Alex Kapoyan for the Happy Hour release. Alex was never really into the band at all. He had his own thing going on. He was into it at the very beginning, but he had too much. He had high aspirations for his other band at the time. When we got offered the tour, we definitely went to Anthony and said, come on, this is something that we all want to do, and it'll be great. We'll go out, see the world, play some tunes, have some fun. But he wasn't having it. So I don't know exactly how we decided or reached out to Dave or if Dave reached out to us, but Dave Franklin from Vision filled in for vocals for the entire tour. And at that point, Rich had moved to second guitar and we brought Lars Weiss in on bass for that tour. So there was the band looked completely different.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then Carl, you talked a little bit, in another conversation about, how the expectation of people in Europe of what they got versus what they might have thought they were getting was a little different.
Oh God. I mean, yeah, they were certainly, from the look standpoint, they were certainly looking to get they were looking to get a pack of kind of closely cropped, shaved kind of hardcore kids, and what they got looked like a bunch of extras from the movie Singles or something like that. Like they got a bunch of dirty long hairs, and of course in the United States a hardcore set is at least at the time, for bands that are of our stature, was 30, 35 minutes. 40 minutes, 45 minutes. You're wet. You're pushing it. You're over the limit. But over in Europe, they wanted us to play for like an hour and 15, sometimes more than that. So, we had to pad our set with all kinds of covers too, which kind of, our choice of covers, probably irked some people too. I mean, I'm sure we had like a negative approach in there. But, we had some other weird covers in the set.
Would you play like Dinosaur Jr. or something? Like how crazy did it get?
Pretty damn close.
Well, listen, we played a Minor Threat cover. We played some Black Flag covers. I think we played a Negative Approach cover. We played cover. Yeah, there was a Superchunk cover. It was like there was a song at the time we liked called "Slack Motherfucker," which is we played that song. We think listen. I mean, we played some. There were times when things were weird, like in some of the countries where they weren't so into like the purity, like in Germany, like these people knew New York hardcore. They had seen all the photos. They had listened to all the records. They had read all the fanzines. They knew what was going on. But once you roll into a place in the countryside of Spain or in Italy where, people are just kind of a little more freewheeling and just want to hear music. Those nights we probably broke out some even weirder impromptu covers. But, I mean, for the most part, yeah, it was nothing quite like seeing Raw Deal at Seabees in 1988. Not from the standpoint of the looks of it, but, from the sound, when we played our stuff, it sounded like Kiling Time. It sounded like Raw Deal. And I the people there was certainly a lot of people that were shocked and unhappy. But, as I've gone back there over the years and met people who are real music fans, they remember it fondly. So we had I really, really wish Anthony would have come. He was on the verge of coming. Last minute he bailed out. But you know what? I mean, Dave Vision was a guy who we were best friends with the first time we ever met him, playing probably like Kiling Time and and Vision playing in Rutgers, New Jersey or something like that. And to go on,
they were part of the trifecta of bands that would tour together.
Oh yeah, well, forget about Rutgers. We did that thing in California together, where it was Vision, Sick of It All, Raw Deal, and we did that
the EP.
Yeah. So yeah, we were
Big Frank.
Yeah, we were tight, and we had a really. That was musically, that was one of the stranger Kiling Time lineups, but we really had a blast that time. We really, and I thought we played really well. And you know what? It's that was 1992. Listen, I really would love to get over there and play just one short tour with the lineup we have now with Anthony. And, let, the people over there who still want to see us get a chance. And, maybe 2022. Maybe we'll make it, maybe we'll make it.
I would love to get a second shot at that with Anthony.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be a 30 year anniversary. But, that was a great tour. And you know what? Kiling Time has gone to Europe subsequently with other bootleg lineups, just because people couldn't go, but yeah, I've got no regret. I've got no regrets about that tour. That's who we were at the time, and that's what we gave people.
Yeah, I mean, and I can imagine that you guys also part of touring and part of playing all these shows, at least for me, was always about the hang.
Yeah.
Right. And even going to Seabees was part of it. Wasn't just going to the show. It was, taking the train down from Fordham with Crespo. It was going to go eat at, Mamoon's or Veselka or Kiev, after the show, the ritual of going to like some records for a while, or then walking along all the record stores and, Bleecker Bob's and all the stores that were on 8th Street. Like it was always an entire full day. And when you got to be able to do that with your friends anywhere, even just like going to a coffee shop somewhere else with a bunch of other lunatics, that in itself is fun. And you almost live for the road trip just as much as you live for the show.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. I mean, I distinctly remember you guys, one of the better shows later, was when we all went to Miami.
Oh, that was fantastic.
And, I remember one of our friends had this opulent hotel room at a beachfront, like high-end resort. And
it was, and there was a special guest staying there too. Wasn't there? Was it?
Yeah.
Was it Hoboken's finest, Billy D?
Billy? Oh yeah. There was another. Well, he didn't make it to the show.
Why didn't he make it to the show? He had too much fun in the afternoon.
Cabernet. He had too much Cabernet. I think that's But I remember in the pool at this place, swimming up to Drago, and I'm like, this is fucking great. And then Drago just being like, what's going to ruin all this whole thing? The show.
No true words.
And we had to schlep to the shittiest side of town. I mean, it was fun. It really was. But the idea of having this whole day, getting half in the bag with a bunch of your friends, sitting around a table with guys you've known for 25 years, and then having to pack your shit up and go to some place where someone's gonna have a beer bottle cracked over their head. You're like, oh,
I know,
really?
I know. So at the beginning of 2020, we kind of we recreated that a little bit. We played down in Miami. We played that same club, Churchill's.
Yeah.
But now, someone got badly hurt there. Go figure, right? So now, hardcore bands there are not allowed to play on the stage, I guess, because you lessen the risk of someone flying off the stage and cracking their neck. So we played on the floor at that club, in January of 2020, and it was just it was so off the hook. It was a lot of fun. And then we played a festival the next day. And I don't even remember where that festival was. Tampa, maybe.
Do you think they ran actuarial tables to figure out that risk assessment?
I thought I was at risk playing on the floor there because, people were getting ill.
There's some good video of that show.
Yeah, it was intense. Yeah. I mean, that's listen, we don't go do that many shows, especially if they're not festival shows these days, but after we played that Miami show, all of us were like, yeah, let's come back down here again. That was a trip.
But I mean, think about how our personal aesthetics have changed from being all right, I'll sleep on this floor, this dirty, shitty floor that I don't know what's wrong on it, to being I don't want to do that. I'd rather freaking drink at the hotel bar with a bunch of my friends. It's just that kind of evolution. And you don't even know what's happening because the idiots that you're around are the same idiots. It's just that, everybody has jobs now.
Yeah.
And then, it's just funny to think about some of the road trips, especially because for a long time, Uppercut were almost like your baby brothers, right? Especially partners in crime, Steve went to Fordham, Sefchek went to Fordham. We were all part of the Fordham hardcore kids kind of group that would, make the pilgrimage on Sundays from the Bronx to Seabees. And then, you would do a lot of road trips with Uppercut.
And also Outbursts became kind of a fixture on those road trips too.
Yeah. A little bit Sheer Terror later, but I distinctly remember this episode were you part of the episode in Boston where like we stayed in this skinhead girl's house and she wanted to kill us? Were you on that?
No.
Were you on that show?
That was a uppercut only event.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I'll discuss that with Murphy.
Yeah.
Are you ever surprised by the reaction that like people who are not really hardcore people have to the sound and anger that's in hardcore? Like, when you showed it like a video to your parents or whatever it is, or your parents or your family came to a show where they, what was their reaction?
Well, my parents would never understand. My dad was, when we put out Brightside and it actually came out, on compact disc or whatever, he was shopping that shit around to all his friends in the neighborhood. It was one of the things he was like, my son was doing this band, and all of a sudden there was something fucking tangible in his hand, signed to a record label. And he was I guess the most proud I ever made that man in my life, I guess, was when I handed him that recording. But as far as the music, he wouldn't listen to it. Neither would my mother. Neither would anybody. Everybody kind of just, they liked the music. They loved the drumming. Let's put it that way. But the whole essence of the hardcore sound, the vocals, is something that they can't sit down and listen to, even to this day.
Like I'm definitely my father's son. And you know what? I think my dad liked it. I mean, I think he liked the chaos of it. I remember him watching it. He's like, what's going on here? These guys are jumping. These guys are bare ass naked, jumping all over the place, screaming, fuck. I mean, he acted like he was appalled by it, but I feel like he was really amused by it, so I don't know. I mean, anytime I bring a norm into a hardcore experience, like to, basically to come see me and my band play, they usually come away kind of like knocked out by the kind of level of energy that's out there. If I had brought them to Seabees in 1990, 91, where shit was fucking ill, they'd probably be scared out of their wits. But it's like, I mean, for the most part, people just kind of get off on the energy of it. And when you see me playing on stage, I'm laughing half the time. We're playing the angriest music, but I love the chaos and I love the energy of it. And it just, I don't know. I think some of the people that I bring around that are maybe not hardcore people to see hardcore, they kind of have that they kind of key into that kind of enjoyment aspect of it.
Do you, I mean, it's so weird to think that what would life be for how boring life would be without this cast of lunatics that we know.
Right.
How crazy would it be?
Amen.
And all of us, me with the label and, dealing with the bands all the time, you guys, playing all these international tours and whatever, we got to see the world as kids because of this loud, angry music. And we made friends all over the fucking world. Not too many people have that opportunity. So people can shit on it all they want. But the fact is there's a certain part of it that everybody wants to be a fucking vagabond, and we were able to do that to a certain extent.
These bands are the only reason why I travel out of New York. I've seen, I've been everywhere with this band. It's my group of friends. It's my closest group of friends that I've ever had and never will have. I mean, because we've been together for fucking 30 years. you know, I wouldn't give a second of it back, because I mean, anytime that I think of something hilarious, it's always band related. But, you know, whenever I think of something, you know, that I just want to feel good about, it always leads back to the band and this group of guys, no matter what. I mean, we've been through so many different phases in the band, you know, in love with each other and hating each other. But, you know, there's not a group of people I'd more rather be around than the same dudes that have been in these bands for the longest time.
Sound design and mixing for Mad at the World is by Brad Worrell at Soundwag. Illustrations for each episode are by Christian Minnick. You can follow his art at Coretunes on Instagram. And if you like what we're doing, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter at Blackout NYHC, and on Facebook and YouTube at Blackout Records. Got a comment or a suggestion for us? Hit us at matw@blackoutrecords.com. See you next time.
That's all that I can take. Can't take no more. I've been victim for far too long. Tired of even the score. Gotta fight the hard way. There's no easy way out. Nothing comes easy.